The day Colton Hayes chose the wrong daughter, he destroyed everything Elena Mercer thought she knew about herself. While her beautiful sister stood in silk and pearls, Elena, covered in dirt from morning chores, became the bride nobody expected. Her father called her worthless. Her family called it humiliation. But Colton saw something everyone else missed, a woman who could survive anything. What happened next would shake the frontier, expose dangerous secrets, and prove that the invisible daughter was the only one strong enough to save them all. If you want to see how far this story travels, hit like and drop your city in the comments below. The rooster hadn't even crowed when Elena's hands hit freezing water. She knelt beside the iron pump in darkness, scrubbing her father's work shirt against the washboard until her knuckles bled. The fabric was stiff with dried sweat and manure. 3 shirts down, 11 to go. After laundry came breakfast for 6 people, then mucking the horse stalls, then checking fence posts on the north pasture before the sun got high enough to blister skin. 24 years old, and this was her life, every single day. "Elena!" Her mother's voice cut through the pre-dawn stillness. "Coffee's not made!" Elena didn't answer. She wrung out the shirt, hung it on the line, and grabbed the next one. Speaking back only made things worse. Inside the house, she could hear her older sister Mariah laughing, that high, practiced laugh she'd been perfecting for weeks. The sound made Elena's stomach twist. Today was the day. Colton Hayes was coming. Mariah had been preparing for this moment since the engagement was arranged 3 months ago. New dresses, piano lessons, etiquette training from a woman in town who charged more than their farm maid in a month. Everything the Mercer family had left was riding on Mariah's marriage. Elena finished the laundry as the sky turned from black to gray. She hauled the basket inside, started the coffee, sliced yesterday's bread, fried eggs, and the last of the bacon grease. Her mother swept past her without a word, carrying Mariah's breakfast upstairs on a tray like she was royalty. Their father sat at the table, reading a week-old newspaper someone had left at the general store. "Fence posts?" he asked without looking up. After breakfast. "Storm's coming in 2 days. Needs to be done today." Elena cracked another egg into the pan. "I know." "Then why are you standing here?" Because she was cooking his breakfast. Because she'd been awake since 4. Because her hands were raw and her back hurt, and she was so tired she could barely see straight, but she didn't say any of that. "I'll get it done, Papa." He turned the page. "You better. Hayes' family's not going to want their cattle wandering onto a property that can't even maintain a fence line." The egg popped in the hot grease, splattering her wrist. She didn't flinch. Her younger brother Thomas stumbled downstairs, hair sticking up in every direction, 14 years old and already learning to look through Elena like she was part of the furniture. He grabbed bread off the table, shoved half of it in his mouth. "Mariah says I gotta wear a tie," he mumbled through the bread. "That's stupid." "Wear the tie," their father said. "It's just some rancher." "It's Colton Hayes, show respect." Thomas rolled his eyes but didn't argue further. He slouched in his chair, boots up on the table until their mother came back downstairs and smacked them off. "Honestly, Thomas, today of all days," she turned to Elena. "Is that what you're wearing?" Elena looked down at her plain brown dress, the same one she wore most days. It was clean, patched in a few places, but clean. "I wasn't planning on being seen." "Good. Stay in the kitchen when he arrives. And for heaven's sake, tie your hair back properly. You look like you've been dragged through a barn." Because she had been. Every morning for 10 years. Mariah finally descended the stairs at 8:30, moving like she was floating. Her dress was pale blue, store-bought, not homemade, with lace at the collar and cuffs. Her dark hair was pinned up in some elaborate style their mother had probably spent an hour on. She looked like she belonged in a painting. "Well?" Mariah turned in a slow circle. "What do you think?" "Beautiful," their mother breathed. "Like a damn princess," Thomas muttered. Their father actually smiled. "He's a lucky man." Mariah's gaze slid past Elena without stopping. "I'm so nervous. What if he doesn't like me?" "Impossible," their mother said quickly. "You're perfect." Elena turned back to the dishes, soap and water, and the same plates they'd been using since she was a child. She scrubbed each one clean, dried it, stacked it, let the conversation fade into background noise. She'd been doing this her whole life, making herself small, quiet, invisible. It was easier than fighting for space in a family that had already decided she didn't matter. Mariah was the beauty. Thomas was the son. Elena was just there. Useful when they needed work done, forgotten the rest of the time. And honestly, she'd made peace with it. Or she thought she had. The Hayes party arrived at 10 o'clock. 3 riders coming up the dusty road like something out of a storybook. Colton Hayes in front, broad-shouldered and serious-faced, wearing a black hat and a long coat despite the heat. 2 ranch hands flanking him, both armed. Elena watched from the kitchen window as her father hurried out to greet them. Handshakes all around, big smiles. Her mother appeared in the doorway, Mariah positioned just behind her like a prize being revealed. Colton dismounted. He was taller than Elena expected, mid-30s maybe. He moved with the kind of confidence that came from always being the most important person in any room. He shook her mother's hand, nodded politely to Mariah. Then his eyes shifted past them, straight to the kitchen window where Elena stood. She stepped back instinctively, but it was too late. He'd seen her. "Elena!" Her mother's voice was sharp. "Bring out the lemonade!" She grabbed the pitcher, hands shaking slightly, and carried it outside. The sun hit her like a physical weight. She kept her eyes down, focusing on not spilling anything as she poured glasses for everyone. "And this is our younger daughter," her father said dismissively. "Elena, she helps around the house." Helps. Like she wasn't the only reason the house still functioned. Colton took the glass she offered. "Thank you." His voice was lower than she expected, rougher. "You're welcome, sir." She started to step back, but he didn't move, just stood there, looking at her in a way that made her skin prickle with discomfort. "You manage all the household work?" he asked. Elena blinked. Nobody ever asked her questions. "Yes, sir. And some of the farm work, fences, livestock, whatever needs doing." "By yourself?" "Mostly." Her father laughed, sharp and too loud. "Elena's always been the practical one. Not much to look at, but she's strong. Good worker." The words landed like stones. Not much to look at. Elena's face burned. Mariah stepped forward smoothly, placing herself between Elena and Colton like a barrier. "Mr. Hayes, would you like to see the garden? Mother's roses are absolutely stunning this time of year." "In a moment." Colton didn't look away from Elena. "What happened to your hands?" Elena glanced down. Her knuckles were split and red from the washboard, one thumbnail purple from where she'd smashed it fixing a gate hinge last week. "Just work," she said quietly. "Hard work. It's what needs doing." Something flickered across his face. She couldn't read it. Then he turned to her father. "Could I speak with you privately?" "Of course, absolutely. Inside?" They disappeared into the house. Mariah stared after them, confusion breaking through her careful composure. "What was that about?" "He's probably discussing the arrangement," their mother said, though she sounded uncertain. "Come, darling, let's wait in the parlor." Elena gathered the empty glasses and carried them back to the kitchen. Through the window, she could see her father and Colton standing in the front room, talking. Her father's expression shifted from confident to confused to something that looked like anger. 5 minutes later, her father stormed into the kitchen. "Get cleaned up," he snapped at Elena. "What?" "You heard me. Wash your face. Put on something decent. Now." Elena's stomach dropped. "Why?" "Because Colton Hayes wants to meet with you." The words didn't make sense. "Meet with me? I already, Not as the help. As a potential bride." The world tilted sideways. Papa, that's not funny. Do I look like I'm joking?" His face was red, veins standing out in his neck. "I don't know what kind of game he's playing, but he specifically requested to speak with you. So you're going to go in there, answer his questions politely, and then he's going to come to his senses and choose Mariah like he's supposed to." From the parlor came the sound of something breaking, probably Mariah throwing something. Their mother's voice rose in frantic reassurance. Elena's hands were shaking again. "I don't understand." "Neither do I, but we've got 10 minutes before he changes his mind about this whole thing and rides off. Move." She stumbled upstairs in a daze. Her room was barely big enough for a bed and a trunk. She splashed water on her face, changed into her Sunday dress. Gray, simple, but at least it didn't have any patches. Tried to do something with her hair but gave up after 30 seconds. It was going to look like a mess no matter what. When she came back downstairs, Colton was standing alone in the front room. Her parents had vanished, probably dragged away by propriety, though she could hear her mother's voice drifting from the parlor. high-pitched with distress. "Miss Mercer." Colton gestured to the chairs. "Would you sit?" Elena sat. Her heart was beating so hard she could feel it in her throat. Colton settled into the chair across from her. He didn't smile. "I'm sure this is confusing." "Yes, sir. Your father arranged for me to marry your sister." "I know, but I'm not going to marry your sister." The bluntness of it hit like a slap. Elena stared at him. "Why not?" "Because she's not what I need. She's beautiful, educated, everything a man could—" "She's everything a drawing room needs," Colton interrupted. "I don't need a drawing room. I need someone who can survive." Elena's mouth went dry. "I don't understand." Colton leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "My ranch covers 30,000 acres, 100-degree summers, floods in spring, blizzards in winter. We run 5,000 head of cattle through territory where you can die a dozen different ways before breakfast. I've got 50 workers, most of them harder and meaner than anything you've seen. And my father—" He paused. "My father doesn't believe women belong anywhere near his ranch, except in the kitchen. He's going to make life hell for whoever I bring home. Then why bring anyone?" "Because he's dying, and he won't leave me the ranch unless I'm married. Says a man needs a wife to keep him grounded." Colton's jaw tightened. "It's manipulation, but it's also the only way I get what's mine." Elena's head spun. "You're telling me this because—" "Because I don't want to lie to you." He met her eyes directly. "Your sister would last maybe a week. She's been trained to be decorative, to entertain, to manage servants and throw parties. None of that matters where I live. What matters is whether you can think fast when things go wrong, whether you can work until your body wants to quit and then keep going anyway, whether you've got enough spine to stand up when everyone around you is trying to break you down." He gestured toward her hands. "You've got calluses from real work. You've been underestimated your whole life. You know how to survive on nothing. That's what I need." The room felt too small, too hot. "You don't even know me." "I know enough. I know you've been running this farm while your family takes credit. I know you didn't flinch when your father called you worthless to your face. I know you've got the kind of strength that doesn't come from being pampered." He paused. "I'm not offering you a fairy tale. I'm offering you a chance to be something other than invisible." Elena's breath caught. "If you say no, I'll leave. Your father will probably arrange another marriage for your sister. Your life will continue exactly as it has been." Colton stood. "But if you say yes, everything changes. You'll leave today, right now. You'll never be the forgotten daughter again, but you'll also be walking into the hardest thing you've ever done." He held out his hand. "Your choice." Elena looked at that outstretched hand, then at the kitchen where she'd spent 10,000 mornings washing dishes, at the stairs where she'd carried breakfast trays for a sister who never said thank you, at the window facing fields she'd worked until her back screamed. She thought about her father calling her not much to look at, her mother saying stay in the kitchen, Mariah looking through her like she was furniture, 24 years of being useful but not valued, needed but not wanted, present but not seen. Colton wasn't offering her love. He was offering her a purpose, a place where being strong mattered more than being pretty, where survival skills counted more than piano lessons. It wasn't romance, but it was something. Elena stood, placed her calloused hand in his. "Okay." The word felt like jumping off a cliff. Colton's grip was firm. "Pack what you can carry. We leave in 15 minutes." Everything after that happened too fast to process. Her mother appeared in the doorway, face white. "This is insane. She can't just—" "She can," Colton said. "And she is." Mariah stood behind their mother, crying actual tears, though Elena suspected they were more about humiliation than heartbreak. Thomas just stared, mouth hanging open. Their father blocked Elena as she headed for the stairs. "You're making a mistake." "Maybe." Elena pushed past him. "But it'll be mine." She grabbed her trunk, small, battered, containing everything she owned. 3 dresses, a coat, a book her grandmother gave her before she died, the photograph of her mother's mother that nobody else wanted. That was it. 24 years condensed into one trunk that barely weighed 30 pounds. When she came back downstairs, her father tried one more time. "You're not ready for this. You'll fail. You'll embarrass us." Elena looked at him, really looked at him. saw the disappointment that had lived in his eyes every time he looked at her since she was old enough to notice, saw the way he'd never once told her she was good enough. "I've been failing you my whole life," she said quietly. "At least this time I'll be failing somewhere else." She walked out the door. Colton's ranch hands had brought an extra horse, a sturdy sorrel mare with kind eyes. Colton tied Elena's trunk behind the saddle, then helped her mount. His hands on her waist were impersonal, efficient. "You know how to ride?" he asked. "Well enough." "Good. It's a 6-hour trip. We'll stop once to rest the horses." Elena gathered the reins. Behind her, her mother had come out onto the porch. She looked smaller than Elena remembered. Older. "Elena, please, think about what you're doing." Elena had thought about it for about 90 seconds, the fastest, most reckless decision of her entire careful life. She nudged the mare forward. They rode away from the farm, away from the house where she'd been invisible, away from the family who'd never seen her. The morning sun climbed higher. The land stretched out in every direction, brown and harsh and unforgiving. Colton rode beside her, silent. After an hour, he spoke. "You can still change your mind. I'll take you back." Elena's hands ached from gripping the reins too tight. Her dress was already dusty. She probably looked ridiculous. "I'm not changing my mind. It's going to be harder than you think. Everything's always harder than I think. I'm used to it." Something that might have been respect crossed his face. "Fair enough." They rode in silence for another mile. "Can I ask you something?" Elena said. "Go ahead." "Why did you really choose me?" Colton was quiet for a long moment. When he finally answered, his voice was careful. "Because your sister would have expected me to protect her. You already know nobody's going to protect you. You'll protect yourself." It wasn't romantic, but it was honest, and somehow that mattered more. They stopped at midday beside a creek that was barely more than a trickle. The horses drank while Colton pulled out bread and dried meat from his saddlebag. He handed half to Elena without ceremony. She ate even though she wasn't hungry. Her stomach was twisted in knots. "Tell me about the ranch," she said. Colton chewed slowly. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. If I'm walking into hell, I should at least know what kind." He almost smiled. Almost. "The land's beautiful. Dangerous, but beautiful. My father built the ranch from nothing 40 years ago. Fought off rustlers, weather, disease, debt, everything. The ranch is his life, his identity. And now it's yours. Supposed to be, but he doesn't trust me. Thinks I'm too soft, too educated. I spent time back east learning modern ranching techniques, business management. He sees that as weakness." "Is it?" "No, but try telling him that." Colton tossed a pebble into the creek. "He's going to hate you." Elena took a breath. "Because I'm not rich? Because you're not controllable. He'll test you. Try to break you. Make you quit. And if I don't quit, then you'll be the first person in 20 years who stood up to Gideon Hayes without getting destroyed." The words should have terrified her. Instead, something stubborn and angry unfurled in Elena's chest. She'd spent her whole life being underestimated, being dismissed, being treated like she didn't matter. Let them try to break her. She'd survived her family. She'd survived this. They reached the ranch 2 hours before sunset. Elena had been expecting something impressive, but nothing prepared her for the reality. The main house sprawled across a hilltop like a fortress, stone and timber, 2 stories tall, with a wraparound porch and windows that caught the dying light. Below it stretched endless pastures, dotted with cattle that looked like dark specks against the brown grass. Outbuildings clustered near the main house. Barns, bunkhouses, stables, storage sheds. Smoke rose from multiple chimneys. It was a kingdom, and Elena was supposed to be its queen. The thought was so absurd she almost laughed. Ranch hands looked up as they rode in. Elena felt their eyes tracking her, assessing, judging, dismissing. A woman in a dusty dress on a borrowed horse. Not exactly impressive. Colton dismounted near the main house. "Come on, might as well get this over with." Elena slid off the mare, legs shaky from 6 hours of riding. Colton handed the horses off to a young ranch hand who stared at Elena like she was a curiosity. The front door opened. Gideon Hayes stepped out. He was shorter than Elena expected, but he made up for it in sheer presence. Late 60s, white hair, shoulders still broad despite his age. His face was all hard lines and sharper angles. He looked like a man who'd spent his entire life fighting and winning. His eyes landed on Elena. The disgust was immediate and undisguised. This? His voice could have cut stone. This is what you brought me? Colton's jaw tightened. Elena Mercer, my fiancée. I arranged for you to marry the Mercer girl, the beautiful one. I chose differently. Gideon came down the porch steps slowly, deliberately. He circled Elena like she was livestock at auction. She forced herself to stand still, chin up. What's your family worth? Gideon asked. Nothing, sir. Education? 8th grade. Accomplishments? Elena met his eyes. I can work. Gideon laughed, sharp and mean. You can work. Wonderful. I've got 50 ranch hands who can work. What makes you think you belong here? I don't think I belong here. The words came out harder than she intended. But I'm here anyway. Silence. Gideon stared at her. Then he turned to Colton. You've lost your mind. Probably. She'll last a week, maybe less. Then it won't cost you much. It'll cost me my reputation. People will think Hayes men marry down. Gideon's voice dripped contempt. Look at her. She looks like a field hand. Good, Colton said flatly. Because that's exactly what we need. Father and son faced off on the porch. The air between them vibrated with old anger, old arguments Elena didn't understand. Finally, Gideon stepped back. Fine. But when she fails, and she will fail, I want it documented. I want everyone to see that your modern ideas and weak choices don't work in the real world. He slammed back into the house. Elena released a breath she didn't know she was holding. Colton looked at her. Still want to stay? Every instinct screamed at her to run, to get back on that horse and ride until she found somewhere, anywhere, that didn't feel like walking into a battlefield. But where would she go? Back to her family? Back to being invisible? Yeah, she said quietly. I still want to stay. Colton nodded once. Good, because it's about to get worse. He wasn't wrong. The house smelled like leather and wood smoke and something Elena couldn't identify. Maybe just decades of men living without much thought to comfort. Colton led her through a front hall lined with hunting trophies and faded photographs, past a dining room with a table that could seat 20, into a kitchen that was bigger than her entire childhood home. A woman stood at the stove, stirring something in a massive pot. She was maybe 50, with gray-streaked hair pulled back in a severe bun and hands that looked like they'd seen as much hard work as Elena's. Martha, Colton said. This is Elena. She'll be staying here. Martha turned, wooden spoon still in hand. Her eyes swept over Elena, quick, assessing, not unkind but not exactly welcoming either. The bride? She asked. Yes. Huh. Martha went back to stirring. Hope you're tougher than you look. Everyone keeps saying that, Elena muttered. Martha's mouth twitched. Might have been a smile. Your room's upstairs, 3rd door on the right. Dinner's at 6. Don't be late. Colton picked up Elena's trunk like it weighed nothing and headed for the stairs. Elena followed, her boots loud on the wooden floors. Everything in this house felt oversized. The doorways, the ceilings, the furniture, built for men who took up space without apology. The room he showed her to was plain but clean. A bed with a metal frame, a dresser, a small window overlooking the north pastures, no curtains, no decorations. It looked like a place to sleep and nothing more. It's not much, Colton said, setting down her trunk. It's fine. He moved toward the door, then paused. Dinner's going to be rough. My father will try to humiliate you. Just don't react. That's what he wants. How am I supposed to not react? I don't know. But if you show weakness, he'll go for the throat. Colton's expression was unreadable. I'll be there. I won't let it get too bad. Then he was gone. Elena sat on the bed. The mattress was firmer than she was used to. Through the window, she could see cattle moving in the distance, dark shapes against darkening sky. Somewhere below, men were shouting to each other. Normal ranch sounds, but foreign to her ears. She'd made a terrible mistake. That thought hit her so hard she had to press her hands against her knees to keep them from shaking. What had she been thinking? She didn't know these people, didn't know this life. She'd traded one kind of hell for another, except this one came with a man she barely knew, and his father who already hated her. But going back wasn't an option, not anymore. Elena opened her trunk and pulled out her other dresses, hung them in the small closet, changed into the gray one again since the brown was filthy from travel, washed her face in the basin someone had left on the dresser, tried to fix her hair and gave up after 2 minutes. When she came downstairs at 6, the dining room was full. Gideon sat at the head of the table like a king on a throne. Colton sat to his right. 5 other men filled the remaining chairs: ranch foreman, livestock manager, and a few others Elena couldn't identify. They all stopped talking when she appeared. Martha emerged from the kitchen carrying a platter of meat. "Sit anywhere," she said to Elena. The only empty chair was at the far end of the table, opposite Gideon. Elena sat. Every eye in the room tracked her movement. "Gentlemen," Gideon said, not looking at Elena, "this is my son's future wife. Elena something or other from some failing farm I've never heard of." Heat crawled up Elena's neck. "Mercer," Colton said quietly. "Elena Mercer." "Right, Mercer." Gideon carved into the roast beef like he was butchering it. "Well, Miss Mercer, since you'll be living here, however briefly, you might as well know how things work. This is a cattle ranch, not a finishing school. We work 14-hour days minimum. We don't tolerate weakness, complaining, or mistakes that cost us money. You'll earn your keep, or you'll leave. Clear?" Elena forced herself to meet his eyes. "Clear." "Good. Now tell me, what exactly do you bring to this operation?" The room went silent. Elena's mouth was dry. "I don't know yet." One of the ranch hands snorted. Gideon smiled, cold and sharp. "You don't know. Fantastic. My son brings home a wife who doesn't know what she's good for. That's exactly what this ranch needs." "I know how to work," Elena said. "I know how to learn. That's what I bring." "Work." Gideon leaned back in his chair. "What kind of work? Needlepoint? Flower arranging? Fences, livestock, planting, harvest, whatever needs doing. On a farm the size of a postage stamp, maybe. This ranch runs 5,000 head of cattle across 30,000 acres. You think your little farm skills translate?" "I think I won't know until I try." Gideon laughed, genuinely amused. "Oh, you'll try. And you'll fail, but I admire the confidence." He turned to Colton. "How long you giving her?" "I say 3 days before she's crying to go home." "She's not going anywhere," Colton said. "We'll see." Dinner was beef, potatoes, and bread that Martha brought out in quantities that seemed designed to feed an army. The men ate like they were in competition, barely talking, focused entirely on food. Elena picked at her plate. Her stomach was in knots. "So, Miss Mercer," the foreman said, a weathered man named Tucker with a scar across his jaw. "You ever worked cattle?" "No, sir." "Horses?" "A little. Farm horses. Ranch horses are different, meaner, smarter. They'll test you." "Everything here will test her," Gideon interjected. "That's the point." Tucker ignored him. "You ride well?" "Well enough to get here." "That's not the same as well enough to work." Tucker soaked bread in gravy. "But I suppose we'll find out tomorrow." Elena's heart kicked. "Tomorrow?" "You want to earn your keep, don't you?" Gideon's smile was all teeth. "Tucker, put her with the morning crew. Let's see what she's made of." "That's not—" Colton started. "It's fine," Elena interrupted. She looked at Tucker. "What time?" 4:30. Be ready to ride." "I'll be ready." Gideon raised his glass in mock salute. "To my future daughter-in-law. May she last longer than I expect." Nobody drank to that. After dinner, Elena escaped to her room. She sat on the bed, hands shaking again. 4:30 in the morning, riding, working cattle, with men who already thought she was a joke. A knock at the door made her jump. "It's me," Colton said. She opened the door. He stood in the hallway, still in his dinner clothes, looking tired. "You don't have to do this," he said. "I can tell Tucker—" "No." Elena's voice came out harder than she intended. "Your father already thinks I'm weak. If I back out now, he'll be right. He's trying to break you on day one." "Let him try." Colton studied her. "You're angry." "Of course I'm angry. I've been here 6 hours and everyone's treating me like I'm some kind of experiment, like I'm entertainment." "I know, I'm sorry." "Don't apologize, just—" Elena stopped. "Just tell me how to survive tomorrow." Colton leaned against the doorframe. Listen to Tucker. He's hard, but he's fair. Don't try to prove anything. Just do what you're told and don't fall off your horse. That's it? That's it. The men are waiting for you to fail. Don't give them the satisfaction. He left. Elena barely slept. She kept startling awake, thinking she'd overslept, then realizing it was still the middle of the night. When she finally gave up and got dressed, it was 4:15. She put on her oldest dress, the brown one, now brushed clean, and boots that were already falling apart. The kitchen was dark, except for a single lamp. Martha stood at the stove, frying eggs. "Sit," she said without turning around. Elena sat. Martha slid a plate in front of her. Eggs, bacon, toast, coffee so strong it could strip paint. "Eat all of it," Martha said. "You'll need it." Elena ate. The food sat heavy in her stomach. "They're going to be rough on you," Martha said. "The men. They don't think women belong on a working ranch." "What do you think?" Martha poured herself coffee. "I think if you can do the work, it doesn't matter what's between your legs. But you've got to prove it. Every single day." "How long did it take you?" "To prove myself?" Martha's laugh was bitter. "I've been here 18 years, still proving it." That should have been discouraging. Somehow it wasn't. Elena finished eating just as boots sounded on the porch. Tucker appeared in the doorway, along with 3 other ranch hands, all young, all lean, and hard from years of physical labor. "Ready?" Tucker asked. "Yes, sir." They walked to the stables in darkness, the world still and cold. Someone had already saddled a horse for Elena, the same sorrel mare from yesterday. Elena mounted, grateful that at least the horse was familiar. "We're moving the north herd to new pasture," Tucker explained as they rode out. "About 300 head. Job's simple. Keep 'em together, keep 'em moving, don't let any break off. You ride the right flank. All you gotta do is stay in position." Simple. Sure. The sky was just starting to lighten when they reached the cattle. They were massive up close, each one easily 1,000 pounds, with horns that could gut a horse if they got spooked. The morning air filled with their sounds, lowing, shuffling, the occasional bellow. "Move out!" Tucker shouted. The crew spread out around the herd. Elena took her position on the right side, the mare dancing nervously beneath her. The cattle started moving, slow at first, then picking up momentum. Dust rose in clouds. The noise was overwhelming. For the first hour, Elena just tried to stay in the saddle. The mare was quick, responsive, cutting back and forth to keep cattle in line. Elena gripped with her thighs, leaned into the turns, tried to anticipate movement. Her dress tangled around her legs. Sweat soaked through her collar. The sun climbed higher, turning the world into a furnace. A steer broke from the herd, just bolted sideways, heading for open range. "Mercer!" Tucker's voice cut through the chaos. "Get him!" Elena didn't think. She kicked the mare into a gallop, chasing the steer across rough ground. The mare's hooves hit rocks, stumbled, recovered. Elena leaned forward, urging her faster. They cut in front of the steer, turned him back toward the herd. When she rejoined the crew, Tucker nodded once. No praise, just acknowledgement. They worked until noon when Tucker finally called a halt near a creek. The men dismounted, let the horses drink, collapsed in whatever shade they could find. Elena slid off the mare and immediately regretted it. Her legs buckled. She caught herself on the saddle, breathing hard. One of the younger ranch hands, couldn't have been more than 19, grinned at her. "Sore?" "No," Elena lied. "Sure you're not." He offered her a canteen. "Name's Jack. You did okay out there." "For a woman?" "For anyone on their first day." Jack drank from his own canteen. "Most people fall off at least once." Elena's hands were shaking. She clenched them into fists. "Day's not over yet." They worked until the sun started dropping, finally getting the herd settled in new pasture. By the time they rode back to the ranch, Elena could barely feel her legs. Everything hurt. Her back, her shoulders, her hands where she'd gripped the reins too hard for 8 hours straight. She dismounted outside the stables, stumbled, caught herself. Tucker appeared beside her. "You'll be sore tomorrow. Worse than today. Push through it." "I will." "Good." He took the mare's reins. "You did better than I expected." It was the closest thing to a compliment she'd gotten all day. Elena limped back to the house. Martha met her at the door with a knowing look. "Bath's drawn upstairs. Use it before dinner." Elena nearly cried with gratitude. The bath was in a small room down the hall from her bedroom, a copper tub filled with water that was still warm. Elena stripped off her filthy dress, sank into the water, and let out a sound that was half relief, half pain. Every muscle screamed. She scrubbed the dust and sweat from her skin, washed her hair, stayed in the tub until the water turned cold. When she finally got out, her reflection in the small mirror looked like someone she didn't recognize, sunburned, exhausted, alive in a way she'd never been before. Dinner was the same crowd as the night before. Elena took her seat at the end of the table, back straight despite the agony. Gideon cut into his steak. "So, how was your first day playing rancher?" "Fine," Elena said. "Fine. Tucker, is that accurate?" Tucker didn't look up from his plate. She kept up. Kept up. Gideon seemed disappointed. "Didn't fall off? Didn't cry?" "No, sir." "Shame. I was hoping for at least one dramatic failure." Gideon finally looked at Elena. "Don't get comfortable, Miss Mercer. One day doesn't mean anything. We'll see how you feel after a week." Elena forced herself to eat, even though every movement hurt. After dinner, she made it to her room and collapsed on the bed fully clothed. She meant to change into a nightgown. Instead, she fell asleep instantly. The next morning was worse. Her body felt like it had been beaten with hammers. She could barely move without something seizing up. Getting dressed took 10 minutes. Walking downstairs required holding onto the railing. Martha took one look at her and snorted. "Told you. I'm fine." "You're a mess. Eat." Elena choked down breakfast. When Tucker appeared at 4:30, she was ready. Barely. But ready. The work that day was fence repair, miles of barbed wire that needed checking, tightening, replacing. Elena learned how to string wire without cutting herself to ribbons, learned how to dig post holes in ground that was more rock than dirt, learned that her hands could bleed and she could keep working anyway. Jack worked beside her most of the day. He was chatty, which helped distract from the pain. "So why'd you really come here?" he asked, hammering a post into place. Elena pulled wire taut. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you could have married some town boy, lived easy. Why choose this?" "You think this was a choice? Wasn't it?" Elena was quiet for a moment. "I guess it was. But it didn't feel like one. It felt like the only option that wasn't going backward." Jack seemed to consider that. "Fair enough. Still, takes guts. Or stupidity. Sometimes they're the same thing." By the third day, something shifted. Elena's body started adapting. The pain didn't disappear, but it became manageable. She learned the rhythms of ranch work, the early mornings, the brutal middays, the exhausted evenings. Learned which horses were reliable and which ones would test her. Learned that Tucker's silence usually meant approval and his criticism meant he thought she could do better. The ranch hands stopped watching her like she was about to break, started treating her like just another worker. Except she wasn't. She was still the woman who didn't belong, the outsider, the one Gideon Hayes wanted to fail. On the fourth day, Elena was working in one of the distant pastures when she heard shouting. She rode toward the sound and found 3 ranch hands surrounding a cow that was clearly in distress, on her side bellowing, trying to give birth and failing. "She's been like this for an hour," one of the hands said. "Calf's stuck. We're going to lose both of them." "Did you call Tucker?" "He's 2 miles out. Won't get here in time." Elena dismounted. She'd helped with difficult births before. Farm animals weren't that different from cattle. At least, she hoped they weren't. "Hold her still," she said. The men stared at her. "Now." They moved. Elena knelt beside the cow, assessed the situation. The calf was breech, coming out backward, which explained why it was stuck. She'd seen this before, knew what to do. She rolled up her sleeves. 45 minutes later, the calf was out, wet and shaking, but alive. The mother cow staggered to her feet, immediately started licking her baby clean. Elena sat back in the dirt, covered in blood and birth fluids, breathing hard. The ranch hand stared at her like she'd just performed magic. "How the hell did you know how to do that?" one of them asked. "Farm work," Elena said. "Same principle." When Tucker arrived 20 minutes later, he took one look at the scene and turned to the men. "Who delivered the calf?" They all pointed at Elena. Tucker walked over to where she sat, still catching her breath. He looked at the calf, the mother, then at Elena. "Good work," he said. That night at dinner, one of the ranch hands, the one who'd been there for the birth, told the story. Made it sound more dramatic than it was, but the facts remained. Elena had saved a calf and a cow worth real money. Gideon listened without expression. "Beginner's luck," he said when the story finished. "Maybe," Tucker said. "But the calf's alive. That's what matters." Elena caught Colton's eye across the table. He didn't smile, but something passed between them. Acknowledgement. Maybe even respect. After dinner, he found her on the porch. She was watching the sunset, trying to ease the permanent ache in her shoulders. "You're doing well," he said. "Your father doesn't think so." "My father won't think so until you've been here 20 years. Maybe not even then." Elena laughed, short and tired. "Good to know there's a timeline." Colton leaned against the railing beside her. "The men are talking about you, in a good way. That doesn't happen often. They just didn't expect me to be useful." "Most people aren't, not out here." He paused. "I wasn't sure you'd make it past the first week." "Honestly, neither was I." They stood in comfortable silence. The sky turned from orange to purple to deep blue. Stars started appearing, more than Elena had ever seen in her life. "Can I ask you something?" Elena said. "Sure. Why do you stay? If your father makes everything so difficult, why not just leave? Start your own ranch somewhere else?" Colton's jaw tightened. "Because this is mine. He built it, but it's supposed to be mine. And I'm not letting him win by walking away." "Even if it kills you?" "Even then." Elena understood that. She'd felt the same way about her family's farm, until she realized staying was just another form of dying. "Well," she said, "at least we're both stubborn. That's one word for it." Week 2 brought new challenges. Gideon started assigning Elena the worst jobs on the ranch, mucking out stables, hauling feed in 100-degree heat, repairing equipment that nobody else wanted to touch. Tasks designed to humiliate, to break her down. Elena did them all without complaint. She learned that pride was a luxury she couldn't afford. Learned that survival meant doing whatever needed doing, no matter how degrading. Learned that the only way to beat Gideon was to refuse to quit. But the work was wearing her down. 2 weeks in, Elena was repairing a water trough when the wood splintered wrong, drove a chunk deep into her palm. Blood welled up immediately. She wrapped it in her bandana, kept working. By evening, her hand was swollen and hot to the touch. Martha saw it when Elena came in for dinner. "Let me see that." "It's fine." "Let me see it." Elena held out her hand. Martha's expression darkened. "That's infected. You need to clean it properly, now." She dragged Elena into the kitchen, poured alcohol over the wound. Elena bit down on her lip to keep from making noise. Martha dug out the remaining splinters with a needle, wrapped the hand in clean cloth. "You should have dealt with this hours ago," Martha said. "I was working." "You can't work if you lose the hand to infection, you idiot." Elena flexed her fingers. "Thank you." "Don't thank me, just don't be stupid." Martha put away the medical supplies. "You're trying too hard to prove something." "I have to prove something. That's the whole point." "No, the point is to survive. There's a difference." That night, Elena lay in bed staring at the ceiling, hand throbbing. Martha was right. She was trying to prove something, trying to show Gideon that he was wrong, trying to show Colton that he'd made the right choice, trying to show herself that she mattered. But at what cost? She'd been at the ranch 17 days and she was already breaking down. Her hands were a mess of cuts and calluses. Her back hurt constantly. She'd lost weight she couldn't afford to lose. She fell asleep the moment she hit the bed and woke up exhausted. How long could she keep this up? The answer came faster than she expected. On day 19, Elena was working with a particularly aggressive horse, a stallion that had thrown 3 riders in the past month. Tucker wanted the horse broken. Elena volunteered because nobody else would. The stallion threw her on the second ride. She hit the ground hard, heard something crack. Pain exploded through her ribs. Couldn't breathe. The world tilted sideways. Someone was shouting. Hands grabbed her. She was being carried. "Don't move her. We have to get her inside. Someone get Colton." Elena tried to say she was fine, but the words wouldn't come. Everything hurt too much. She woke up in her bed. Colton sat in a chair beside her, face drawn. When he saw her eyes open, something like relief crossed his expression. "How bad?" Elena whispered. "3 broken ribs. Could have been worse. Could have been your spine." "The horse?" "Tucker's handling it." Elena tried to sit up. Pain lanced through her chest. She gasped, fell back. "Don't move," Colton said. "You need to rest. Minimum 2 weeks." "I can't." "You can. You will." "Your father?" "My father can go to hell." Colton's voice was flat. "I don't care what he thinks. You're hurt because I let him push you too hard. This is on me." Elena's vision was starting to blur. "Not your fault." "Yes, it is." She wanted to argue, but exhaustion dragged her under. When she woke again, it was dark. Martha sat beside the bed, knitting. "Drink this," Martha said, holding out a cup. "What is it?" "Tea with laudanum for the pain." Elena drank. It tasted terrible, but the pain started fading almost immediately. She sank back into the pillows. "Am I getting sent away?" she asked. Martha's needles clicked. "Why would you think that?" "I failed, got hurt, proved your father-in-law right." "You got hurt because you volunteered for a job that terrified grown men. That's not failure. That's either bravery or stupidity, and I haven't decided which." "Probably stupidity." "Probably." Martha set down her knitting. "But here's what you need to understand. Gideon's been waiting for you to quit. Every day you stay, you prove him wrong. Getting hurt doesn't change that. It just means you're human." Elena's eyes were getting heavy again. "I'm so tired." "Then sleep. I'll be here." The next week passed in a haze of pain and forced rest. Elena wasn't allowed out of bed for the first 3 days. After that, she could move around her room, but nothing more. She spent hours staring out the window, watching ranch work continue without her. Colton visited every evening. They didn't talk much. He'd bring her dinner, make sure she was comfortable, then sit in silence while she ate. It should have been awkward. Somehow it wasn't. On the 4th day of her confinement, Gideon appeared in her doorway. Elena was sitting in the chair by the window, dressed but moving carefully. She didn't stand when he entered. "Heard you got thrown," Gideon said. "Yes, sir." "That horse has thrown a lot of men. Thrown me twice, 20 years ago." Elena didn't know what to say to that. Gideon crossed the room, looked out the window. "My son thinks I've been too hard on you." "Have you?" "Yes." The admission surprised her. "But not because I'm cruel, because this life is cruel. This land will break you if you're not strong enough. I've watched it happen 100 times. People come out here thinking they're tough, thinking they can handle it. They're wrong." "You think I'm wrong?" Gideon turned to look at her. "I thought you were. I'm not sure anymore." "What changed your mind?" "You saved that calf. You took every awful job I gave you without complaining. You got on a horse that's hospitalized 3 men, and you did it because it needed doing." He paused. "You're either the toughest woman I've ever met or the stupidest. Possibly both." Elena almost smiled. "I'm starting to think they're the same thing. They usually are." Gideon moved toward the door, then stopped. "Heal up. The ranch needs workers who don't quit. We've got shortages coming into fall. You'll be busy." It was the closest thing to acceptance she'd gotten from him. After he left, Elena sat very still, processing what had just happened. Gideon Hayes had essentially told her she belonged here, that she'd earned her place. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like she'd just signed up for a lifetime of proving herself over and over again. But maybe that was okay. Maybe that was the price of being seen. By the time Elena could work again, early autumn had arrived. The heat broke into something almost bearable, and the ranch shifted into preparation mode. Storing feed, reinforcing buildings, getting everything ready for winter that everyone promised would be brutal. Elena's ribs still ached when she moved wrong, but Martha cleared her for light duty. Light duty turned out to mean anything that didn't involve getting on a horse, which left plenty of options. She spent her first week back organizing the tack room, a job that had apparently been ignored for years. Bridles hung in tangles, saddles were cracked and untreated, tools mixed with trash mixed with equipment nobody could identify. Jack found her there on the 3rd day, elbow deep in leather and metal. "You hiding?" he asked. "Working." "Same thing sometimes?" He grabbed a bridle that was beyond saving and tossed it in the discard pile. "Heard you and the boss are getting married next month." Elena's hand stilled. "What?" Colton didn't tell you? Gideon's been talking about it all week, says there's no point waiting since you've already proven you're not running off. Nobody's told me anything, Jack grimaced. Ah, well, guess I just did. Elena set down the saddle she'd been cleaning. Her heart was doing something complicated in her chest. A wedding. An actual wedding. To a man she'd lived beside for 6 weeks but barely knew beyond surface-level conversations about work and weather. She found Colton in the stable, checking a mare's injured leg. He looked up when she approached, read her expression immediately. Jack told you, he said. About the wedding nobody mentioned to me? Yes. Colton straightened, brushing hay off his pants. My father brought it up last night, wanted it done before winter sets in. I was going to talk to you about it today. Were you going to ask or just inform me? Elena, because this whole arrangement has been about everyone else deciding what I do. Your father, my father, you. I came here because I chose to, but everything since then has been orders and expectations and people telling me how things are going to be. Colton was quiet for a long moment. You're right. That stopped her. She'd been gearing up for an argument. I've been treating this like a business arrangement, he continued, which I guess it is, but that doesn't mean you don't get a say. He met her eyes. So, do you want to get married next month? Elena opened her mouth, closed it. The question was so direct it knocked her off balance. I don't know, she admitted. What happens if I say no? Then we wait. Or we don't do it at all. My father will be furious, but that's his problem. And the ranch? You said you needed to be married to inherit. I did say that. Colton leaned against the stable wall. But I'm starting to think maybe that's not worth what it's costing. Elena studied him. He looked tired, older than 35. Like the weight of trying to please his father while fighting him on everything was finally crushing him. What do you want? She asked. Honestly, I want my father to stop controlling my life. But since that's not happening while he's alive, I want to at least make choices that don't make me feel like I'm betraying myself. He paused. Marrying you was supposed to be practical, but you've been here 6 weeks and you've worked harder than anyone I've ever seen. You've earned respect from men who don't give it easily. You saved a calf worth more than most people make in a year, and when my father tried to break you, you just kept showing up. That's not special. That's just surviving. It's both. Colton's expression was serious. I don't love you. You don't love me. But I respect you. And I think if we're going to build something here, a ranch that's not run on fear and cruelty, we need to do it together, as partners. Elena's throat felt tight. Partners. Not a husband who owned her. Not a wife who was decoration. Partners. Okay, she said. Okay, you'll marry me next month? Okay, I'll marry you. But not because your father wants it. Because I want to build something that matters. Something flickered in Colton's eyes. Might have been relief. Then we'll do it right. Small ceremony. Just us and whoever you want there. I don't have anyone. Then just us. The wedding happened on a Tuesday morning in October, in the ranch's small chapel that looked like it hadn't been used in years. The minister was a circuit preacher who happened to be passing through. Martha stood as witness, Tucker beside her. Gideon sat in the front pew, expression unreadable. Elena wore a dress Martha had helped her make. Simple cream-colored cotton, nothing fancy. Colton wore a dark suit that looked uncomfortable on him. The whole ceremony took maybe 15 minutes. When the minister said she could kiss her husband, Colton brushed his lips against hers, brief and formal. It felt like sealing a contract, which Elena supposed was exactly what it was. The reception was dinner with the ranch hands, extra whiskey, and a fiddle player someone had found in town. The men got progressively drunker as the night went on, their jokes getting rougher. Elena nursed one drink and watched, feeling separate from it all, even though it was supposedly her celebration. Colton appeared beside her around 10. You can leave if you want. Nobody'll notice. Where would I go? Your room, my room, wherever you're comfortable. Elena looked at him. They hadn't discussed sleeping arrangements, hadn't discussed much of anything practical about being married. We should probably talk about that, she said. They ended up in his room, larger than hers, with a desk covered in ranch ledgers and maps. Colton closed the door, suddenly looking as awkward as she felt. I'm not expecting anything, he said quickly. From tonight, from any night, this marriage is legal and practical, not... I know. Good. So, you can stay in your room if you want, or you can stay here. Whatever makes sense. Elena sat on the edge of his bed. What do you want? Colton ran a hand through his hair. I want people to believe this is real. My father's already suspicious. If we maintain separate rooms, he'll use it against us somehow. So we share a room, if you're okay with that. Elena looked around. The room was neat, organized, nothing personal except a photograph on the dresser. Colton as a young boy with a woman who must have been his mother. She'd died years ago, Elena knew, though Colton never talked about it. We can make it work, she said, but I'm keeping my own space in the closet. And if you snore, I'm smothering you with a pillow. Colton almost smiled. Fair terms. They figured it out over the next few weeks. Colton slept on one side of the bed, Elena on the other, a careful distance between them. They learned each other's rhythms. Colton rose earlier. Elena took longer to fall asleep. Neither of them snored. Neither of them talked much in the quiet hours. It was strange and awkward and gradually became normal. Work continued. Elena was back on horseback by November, ribs healed enough to handle the jostling. The ranch was preparing for winter in earnest now, moving herds to lower pastures, stockpiling feed, checking every building for structural weaknesses. And then the weather turned. The first real storm hit in mid-November, 3 days of freezing rain that turned the ground to mud and made every task twice as hard. Elena spent those days in the barns, helping to keep the livestock calm and fed. The cold was different from anything she'd experienced, sharper, meaner, seeping into bones. When the storm broke, Tucker gathered the crew for a head count on the northern herd. They'd been moved to winter pasture weeks ago, but nobody had checked on them since the weather hit. "Mercer, you're coming," Tucker said. "Need someone who can spot problems." They rode out at dawn, Tucker, Elena, Jack, and 2 other hands named Sam and Rodriguez. The landscape had transformed. Everything was slick with ice, the trees bent under its weight, beautiful and deadly. They reached the winter pasture by mid-morning and immediately knew something was wrong. The herd was scattered, not gathered together for warmth like they should have been, and there were too few of them. "Start counting," Tucker ordered. They spread out across the pasture. Elena counted animals, checked for injuries, looked for signs of illness. After 2 hours, the numbers were clear. They were short almost 50 head of cattle. "Strayed during the storm?" Sam suggested. Tucker's face was grim. 50 head don't all stray in the same direction. They were driven off. "Rustlers?" Jack's hand moved toward his rifle. "Maybe. Or predators scattered them. Either way, we need to track them. Now." They found the trail heading west. Hoof prints in the mud, broken branches, clear signs of cattle being moved quickly. Tucker sent Sam back to the ranch for reinforcements, while the rest of them followed the trail. 2 hours later, they found the cattle in a narrow canyon, bunched together and guarded by 4 armed men. Tucker held up a hand, stopping the group behind cover. "That's the Cartwright crew," he whispered. "Son of a bitch. They've been raiding our herds." "What do we do?" Elena asked. "We wait for Sam to get back with help. 4 against 4 is bad odds, especially when they're expecting trouble and we're not." But as they watched, one of the rustlers started moving cattle toward the canyon's far end. If they got them through that gap, tracking would be nearly impossible in the rough terrain beyond. "They're moving them," Rodriguez hissed. "If we wait, we lose them." Tucker's jaw worked. "Can't risk it." Elena studied the canyon. The rustlers had positioned themselves well. Good sightlines, cover, high ground. A direct approach would get them shot. But there was another way. "What if they thought we had more people?" Elena said. Tucker looked at her. "What?" "They can't see how many of us there are from down there. What if we made enough noise and movement to make them think we're a bigger force? Might scare them off without a fight. Or they might call our bluff and start shooting." "Maybe. But they're thieves, not soldiers. They're not looking for a real fight. They're looking for easy money." Tucker was quiet, thinking. "It's risky. Everything out here is risky." He almost smiled. "True enough." He turned to Jack and Rodriguez. "You 2 circle around to the north ridge. Make noise, show yourselves, make them think there's a bunch of you. Mercer and I will come in from the south. Do the same. We time it right, they'll think they're surrounded." "And if they don't run?" Jack asked. "Then we shoot straight and hope for the best." They split up. Elena followed Tucker through the rough terrain, staying low, using rocks and brush for cover. Her heart was hammering, but her hands were steady. Fear and focus mixed into something that felt almost like clarity. Tucker positioned them on a ridge overlooking the canyon. From here, they could see all 4 rustlers and the nervous cattle. "When I give the signal," Tucker whispered, "start shooting in the air. Yell like there's 10 of you. Make them believe they're outnumbered." Elena checked her rifle. She wasn't a great shot, but she could hit sky. Tucker raised his arm, dropped it. Elena stood up, fired 3 shots in rapid succession, and started shouting. "We've got them surrounded. Drop your weapons." From the north ridge, Jack and Rodriguez were doing the same. The noise echoed off the canyon walls, multiplying, making 4 people sound like 40. The rustlers spun around, weapons up, trying to find targets. One of them shouted something. Another fired blindly toward the ridge. "You're surrounded," Tucker bellowed. "Lay down your guns or we start dropping you." For 10 long seconds, nothing happened. Then one of the rustlers threw down his rifle. The others followed. They mounted their horses and bolted out of the canyon like hell was chasing them. Elena lowered her rifle, breathing hard. That actually worked. "Don't sound so surprised." Tucker was grinning, actually grinning. "You just saved 50 head of cattle without firing a shot. That's worth telling." They gathered the cattle and started the slow drive back to the ranch. By the time they arrived, the story had already spread. Sam had gotten back with reinforcements, but by then the situation was resolved. The ranch hands wanted details. Elena tried to downplay it, but Jack wasn't having it. "She came up with the whole plan," he told everyone within earshot. "Made 4 of us sound like an army. Rustlers ran like scared rabbits." By dinner, the story had grown. By the next morning, it was legend. Gideon called Elena into his office that afternoon. The room was intimidating, dark wood, leather furniture, walls covered in maps and property deeds. Gideon sat behind a massive desk that made him look like a judge. "Sit," he said. Elena sat. Gideon steepled his fingers. "Tucker says you scared off the Cartwright rustlers." "Tucker did most of the work. I just had an idea. An idea that saved us $20,000 in livestock." Gideon's eyes were sharp. "The Cartwrights have been hitting ranches across the territory for months. Nobody's been able to stop them. You did it without bloodshed. We got lucky." "Luck is what happens when you think fast and act smart. That's not something most people can do." He paused. "You've been here 3 months. In that time, you've saved a calf, survived injuries that sent grown men home crying, and now you've protected ranch assets from armed thieves. You're either incredibly capable or incredibly reckless." "Probably both." Gideon's mouth twitched. Might have been a smile. "My son chose better than I thought." It was the closest thing to praise she'd gotten from him. "Thank you, sir." "Don't thank me yet. Winter's coming in hard, and we're short-handed. You'll be working double what you have been." He pulled out a ledger. "I'm putting you on the operations roster. Full ranch hand pay, same as the men. And I want you helping with the books." Elena blinked. "The books?" "You noticed the fence weakness last month, spotted the feed shortage before anyone else. You see things. I need someone who sees things helping me track our numbers." He slid the ledger across the desk. "Start with inventory. Check it against what Tucker reports. Tell me where the gaps are." It was more responsibility than Elena had ever been given in her life. "I'll do my best," she said. "Do better than that. I'm counting on you." That night, Elena sat at the desk in Colton's room, their room, poring over ranch records by lamplight. The numbers were complicated, tracking hundreds of animals, supplies, expenses, wages. But underneath the complexity was a story, and the story didn't add up. Feed expenses were higher than they should be for the number of livestock. Supply purchases didn't match consumption. There were payments to vendors she couldn't identify. Elena worked until past midnight, making notes, checking calculations. When Colton came in, she was surrounded by papers. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Your father asked me to check the books." "And?" Elena looked up at him. "Something's wrong. The numbers don't match. Either we're being robbed or someone's lying about expenses." Colton's expression darkened. "Show me." They went through it together. Colton knew the ranch operations better than she did, could explain some of the discrepancies, but not all of them. "This vendor," Elena pointed, "Morrison's Supply. We've paid them $18,000 in the past year. For what? Building materials mostly. We've been doing repairs. $18,000 worth. Colton stared at the number. No, maybe half that, maybe. So where's the rest going? They looked at each other. We need to talk to my father, Colton said. Gideon's reaction the next morning was not what Elena expected. He listened to their findings without interruption, his face growing darker with each revelation. When they finished, he sat back in his chair. How long have you known? He asked quietly. Colton stiffened. Known what? About Morrison's supply. About the inflated expenses. I just found out last night. Elena discovered it. Gideon's gaze shifted to Elena. And you brought it straight to my son. Yes, sir. Not to Tucker. Not to the other hands. To Colton. It seemed like family business. Gideon stood, walked to the window. For a long moment, he just stared out at the ranch. When he spoke again, his voice was tired. Morrison Supply is owned by Jacob Morrison. He's been a friend of mine for 30 years, and for the past 5, he's been helping me cover up losses. Colton went very still. What losses? The kind that happen when you build an empire on land that wasn't entirely yours to take. Gideon turned to face them. 40 years ago, when I started this ranch, I needed land. The official channels were too slow, too expensive, so I found other ways, forged some documents, bribed some officials, pushed out a few families who had legitimate claims. Elena's stomach dropped. Most of it was legal enough that nobody could prove otherwise, Gideon continued. But there were a few parcels, prime grazing land, water access, that I took through fraud. The families I pushed out were too poor or too scared to fight back, until 5 years ago when one of their sons came back with a lawyer and proof. And you paid them off, Colton said flatly. I paid them to stay quiet. Morrison Supply isn't a vendor. It's a shell company funneling money to the families I stole from. Hush money. $30,000 a year to keep them from going public. The room was silent. How many families? Elena asked. Gideon met her eyes. 4. Maybe 5, depending on how you count it. Maybe 5. Elena's voice was sharper than she intended. You don't know for sure? I was building something. I didn't always ask questions about whose land I was taking. Colton looked like he'd been punched. You built this ranch on stolen land. I built this ranch on ambition and hard work. The land complications were just obstacles I had to overcome. You mean families you had to destroy? Gideon's jaw tightened. I did what was necessary. You don't build something from nothing by being soft. You built it on lies. Colton's hands were shaking. Everything, the whole legacy, it's all fraud. It's survival. It's what you do when you want something badly enough. Elena stood. No, it's what you do when you're willing to hurt people to get ahead. Gideon turned on her. You don't get to judge me. You've been here 3 months. You don't know what it took to build this. I know it took stealing. I know it took hurting families who couldn't fight back. I know you've been paying them off for 5 years instead of making it right. Making it right would destroy us. If this comes out, we lose half the ranch, maybe more. Investors will walk away. Banks will call loans. Everything collapses. So you keep lying, Elena said. Keep paying hush money. Keep pretending you're a legitimate rancher instead of a thief. Gideon's face went red. Get out. Father, Colton started. Both of you, get out of my office. They left. Elena's hands were shaking as they walked down the hall. Colton looked like he was going to be sick. I didn't know, he said. I swear I didn't know. I believe you. They ended up in the stable, the one place on the ranch that felt relatively private. Colton sank onto a hay bale, head in his hands. Everything I thought this place was, he said quietly. It's all built on crime. Elena sat beside him. What are you going to do? I don't know. If I expose him, the ranch collapses. Everyone loses their jobs. Families who depend on us go under. But if I don't? He looked at her. How do I keep living a lie? I don't know. They sat in silence. The families he stole from, Elena said. They deserve their land back. I know. And the money he's paying them isn't enough. It's hush money. It's not restitution. I know that too. Elena took a breath. Then there's only one choice. Colton looked at her. What? We tell the truth. We give back what was stolen. We rebuild from whatever's left. That'll destroy us. Maybe, but at least it'll be honest. Colton stared at her like she'd suggested burning down the ranch. You're serious. Your father built this place on lies and theft. Do you want to inherit that? Do you want to spend the rest of your life covering up crimes? No, but I also don't want to destroy 50 people's livelihoods. Then we figure out a way to do both. We make it right with the families. We keep the ranch running, but we do it honestly. Colton shook his head. You're asking for the impossible. I'm asking for what's right. There's a difference. He was quiet for a long time. Then he stood. I need to think, he said, and walked out. Elena sat alone in the stable, surrounded by horses and hay and the smell of leather. She'd been at this ranch for 3 months, and she'd already uncovered the rot at its foundation. The smart thing would be to walk away, to leave before the whole thing collapsed and took her with it. But walking away meant letting Gideon win, meant letting those families stay silent and oppressed, meant accepting that power and money mattered more than truth, and Elena had spent her whole life being powerless. She wasn't doing it anymore. Colton didn't speak to Elena for 2 days. He threw himself into work, leaving before dawn and returning after dark, avoiding meals, avoiding conversation, avoiding the decision neither of them could escape. Elena watched him disappear into himself and didn't push. Some things a person had to work through alone. She kept reviewing the books. The more she dug, the worse it got. The Morrison supply payments were just the visible part. There were other irregularities. Land purchases that seemed overpriced, tax payments that didn't match property records, transfers of deed that looked legitimate on the surface but had timing that raised questions. Gideon had built his empire carefully, but he'd also been sloppy in places, maybe because he'd never expected anyone to look this closely. On the 3rd day, Elena was in the barn repairing tack when Martha found her. You need to come to the house, Martha said. Her face was pale. What's wrong? Just come. Elena followed her inside. Gideon was in his office, Colton standing across from him. The tension in the room was thick enough to choke on. Sit down, Gideon said when he saw Elena. She sat. Colton remained standing, arms crossed, expression carved from stone. Gideon pulled out a document, slid it across the desk. This arrived this morning, from the Preston family, one of the families whose land I acquired 40 years ago. Elena picked up the document. It was a legal notice. The Prestons were filing suit to reclaim their land, alleging fraud in the original transfer. They had documentation. They had witnesses. They had evidence that Gideon had bribed a county clerk to forge signatures. They're breaking the deal, Gideon said. I've been paying them for 5 years to stay quiet. Now they're coming after the land anyway. Why now? Elena asked. Because someone told them to. Gideon's eyes fixed on Colton, someone who thinks honesty is more important than survival. Colton didn't flinch. I didn't tell them anything. Then how do they suddenly have documentation they didn't have before? How do they know exactly which parcels to target? Maybe they always knew. Maybe they were building a case. Maybe your payoffs weren't enough. Colton's voice was flat. Or maybe they're just done being bought. This will destroy us. Then we deserve to be destroyed. Gideon stood so fast his chair crashed backward. You self-righteous fool! You think the truth makes you noble? It makes you weak. Those families have been paid more than their land was ever worth. They should be grateful. Grateful? Colton's composure cracked. You stole from them. You forged documents. You destroyed their livelihoods. And you think money makes that right? Money is what makes everything right. That's how the world works. That's how your world works. It's not how mine is going to work. Father and son faced each other across the desk. 40 years of resentment and disappointment and fundamental disagreement boiling over. Elena stood. We need to respond to this. Both men turned to look at her. Fighting it in court will take years, she continued, cost a fortune. And even if we win, which we probably won't, everyone will know what happened. The reputation damage alone will sink us. She paused. There's another option. Which is? Gideon's voice was dangerous. We settle. We give back the land. We compensate the families fairly. And we do it publicly before this goes to court. That's insane. That's taking control of the narrative. Elena met his eyes. Right now, we look like criminals trying to hide. If we come forward first, admit what happened, and make it right, we look like people who made mistakes and are trying to fix them. It won't erase what you did, but it might let us survive it. Gideon laughed, bitter and sharp. You think people will forgive fraud because we confess? You think admitting I'm a criminal will make investors want to work with us? I think hiding makes it worse. I think fighting makes it worse. I think the only way through this is honesty. Honesty will cost us half the ranch. Lying will cost us all of it. Silence filled the office. Colton spoke quietly. She's right. Gideon turned on him. You're willing to throw away everything I built? You didn't build it. You stole it. And yeah, I'm willing to give back what was never ours in the first place. Then you're a fool. Maybe, but I'm not a thief. Gideon's face went purple. For a second, Elena thought he might actually hit his son. Instead, he grabbed the legal notice, crumpled it, threw it at Colton's chest. Fine. Do whatever you want. Destroy everything. See if I care. He pointed at the door. Get out, both of you. They left. Outside the office, Colton leaned against the wall, breathing hard. Elena stood beside him, giving him space. That went well, she said finally. Colton laughed, broken and tired. He's right, you know. This will probably destroy us. Probably? So why am I doing it? Elena thought about that. Because you want to be able to sleep at night. Because you don't want to spend your life covering up someone else's crimes. Because doing the right thing matters more than being comfortable. Does it? I don't know, but I think we're about to find out. The next week was chaos. Colton hired a lawyer, a sharp woman from Denver named Catherine Wright, who specialized in land disputes. She reviewed everything, confirmed what they already knew. Gideon had committed fraud. Multiple counts. The evidence was damning. You could fight this, Catherine said. Drag it out for years. But you'll lose. And you'll spend a fortune losing. We're not fighting, Colton said. We're settling. How do we do that? Catherine laid out the options. They could negotiate directly with the Preston family and the others, offer land returns, financial compensation, public acknowledgement. It would be expensive. It would be humiliating. But it would be final. How long? Elena asked. If everyone cooperates, 2 months, maybe 3. And if they don't? Then we're back in court and this gets uglier. They started with the Prestons. The family patriarch was a man named Daniel Preston, mid-60s, weathered from years of hard work that should have been done on land that was stolen from him. He met them in town, in Catherine's office, with his own lawyer and a look that said he trusted nothing about this situation. Mr. Preston, Colton said, thank you for meeting with us. Didn't have much choice. Daniel's voice was rough. Your lawyer said you wanted to settle. We do. We want to return your land and compensate you fairly for 40 years of lost use. Daniel stared at him. Just like that? Just like that. Why? It was a fair question. Colton glanced at Elena, then back at Daniel. Because my father stole from you, and I don't want to inherit something built on theft. Your father's been paying me $15,000 a year to keep quiet. You're saying you'll give me my land back and pay me more? We're saying we'll give you what should have been yours all along, the land. Fair market compensation for the years you lost. And a public acknowledgement that what happened to you was wrong. Daniel's lawyer leaned in, whispered something. Daniel nodded slowly. What's the catch? He asked. No catch. We need you to drop the lawsuit. We need this settled privately, not dragged through court. And we need you to sign an agreement that once we've made restitution, that's the end of it. No future claims. And if I say no, Catherine spoke up, then you go to court. You'll probably win, but it'll take 3 years minimum, cost you legal fees, and tie up the land in litigation the whole time. You won't be able to use it or sell it until the case resolves. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. I want to see the land assessment. I want my lawyer to verify the compensation is fair. And I want it in writing that the Hayes family admits what they did. Done, Colton said. They shook hands. Over the next 6 weeks, they settled with 4 families. The Preston land, 1,200 acres of prime grazing territory. The Kellerman water rights stolen through bribery. The Martinez homestead taken through forged documents. And the Chen family's timberland acquired through intimidation. Each settlement was different. Each family had their own pain, their own anger, their own demands. But they all settled. The alternative was worse. The compensation emptied most of the ranch's reserves. They had to sell off part of the herd to cover costs. Take out loans, cut expenses everywhere they could. Gideon watched it all happen from his office, drinking more than usual, speaking to no one. He'd stopped coming to meals, stopped participating in ranch operations. It was like watching someone die slowly. "He'll never forgive me," Colton said one night. They were in bed, exhausted from another 18-hour day of negotiations and paperwork. Elena lay staring at the ceiling. "Probably not," she agreed. "Was it worth it? Doing the right thing?" "Yeah, I think so." "Even if it destroys us?" Elena rolled over to look at him. "We're not destroyed. We're rebuilding. There's a difference." But rebuilding was harder than either of them anticipated. The news spread fast. The Hayes Ranch was returning stolen land, admitting fraud, compensating victims. Some people saw it as noble. Others saw it as weakness. Investors got nervous. Business partners started backing away. Tucker came to Colton in December with bad news. "3 of the hands are leaving," he said, "taking jobs at the Morrison Ranch. They're worried we're going under." "Are we?" Colton asked. Tucker was quiet. "Honestly? I don't know. We're burning through cash. The herd's smaller than it should be. Winter's hitting hard, and we're short on supplies." He paused. "But the men who are staying, they're staying because they believe in what you're doing. That counts for something." It had to count for enough. Elena threw herself into making the ranch work with what they had left. She reorganized operations, found inefficiencies nobody had noticed, negotiated better prices with suppliers who respected what they were trying to do. She worked until her hands bled and her back screamed and exhaustion became a permanent state. But slowly, painfully slowly, things started stabilizing. The families they'd made restitution to started talking. Word spread that the Hayes Ranch had done right by people who'd been wronged. It was a strange kind of reputation, but it was better than being known as thieves. New workers started applying, people who wanted to be part of something honest. The quality wasn't always great, but the commitment was real. And then, in January, something unexpected happened. A group of investors from back east reached out. They'd heard about the settlements. They wanted to meet. Colton and Elena traveled to Denver to meet them. 3 men and a woman, all wealthy, all interested in Western ranching. They sat in a hotel conference room that was too fancy for people who spent their days covered in dust and manure. "We've been watching your situation," the lead investor said, a man named Harrison with silver hair and expensive clothes. "What you did was unusual. Most ranchers would have fought those claims." "We didn't have much choice," Colton said. "The evidence was clear. You had the choice to lie, to delay, to make those families suffer through years of litigation. You chose differently." Harrison leaned forward. "That interests us. We've been looking to invest in Western ranching operations, but we want partners who operate ethically, who think long-term, who build businesses that will last." "We're in debt," Elena said bluntly. "We just gave back 1/3 of our land. We're running half the herd we had 6 months ago. We're not exactly a safe investment." "You're an honest one. That's rarer." The woman investor, Patricia, smiled slightly. "We've seen too many operations built on corruption and shortcuts. They make money fast, then collapse when the truth catches up. You've already had that reckoning. You're building from a foundation of truth now. That's worth investing in." They offered $500,000 for a 20% stake in the ranch, modernization funds, and operational support. It was more money than Elena had ever imagined. "There are conditions," Harrison said. "We want transparency, regular audits, proof that you're running things ethically, and we want to see growth, sustainable growth, not quick profits." "We can do that," Colton said. They signed the papers 3 days later. The money arrived in February just as winter started breaking. It was enough to stabilize everything, pay off the loans, restock the herd, repair buildings that had been falling apart, hire back workers they'd lost. Elena stood on the porch one morning in early March, watching the ranch come back to life. Workers were rebuilding the north fence line. New cattle were being integrated into the herd. The equipment shed was getting a new roof. It wasn't the empire Gideon had built. It was smaller, leaner, more fragile. But it was honest. Gideon appeared beside her. He looked older than he had 6 months ago. Thinner, tired. "You're happy," he said. Not a question. "I'm relieved. Relieved that you destroyed everything I spent my life building." Elena looked at him. "I didn't destroy it. I helped save what was worth saving. By admitting we're criminals. By admitting you made mistakes and fixing them." She paused. "The ranch is going to survive. It's going to be different. But it'll survive." Gideon stared out at the land. "I built this place from nothing, fought for every acre, every dollar, and now it's half the size it was. But it's yours. Legitimately yours. Nobody can take it away." "They already did." "No. You gave back what was never yours to keep. Everything else is solid." She opened the telegram. The message was short. "Your father died. Funeral next week. Family needs help." Elena read it 3 times. Felt nothing. Then felt guilty for feeling nothing. "I should go," she said. "Do you want to?" "No, but I should." They left 2 days later. The ride back to her family's farm felt longer than she remembered. Everything looked smaller, shabbier, more desperate than it had in her memory. The farm was barely functioning, fields overgrown, fences collapsed. The house needed repairs that clearly weren't happening. Her mother met them at the door. She looked like she'd aged 10 years in 6 months. Behind her, Mariah stood in a dress that had seen better days. Thomas was taller, skinnier, looking lost. "Elena?" Her mother's voice was flat. "You came." "I got your telegram." They stood in awkward silence. "Who's this?" Her mother looked at Colton. "My husband, Colton Hayes." Her mother's eyes widened slightly. Recognition. The name meant something even out here. "Come in," she said finally. The house smelled like neglect. Dust everywhere. Dishes piled in the sink. The farm wasn't just struggling, it was dying. They sat in the parlor. Her mother served weak coffee. "Your father had a heart attack," she said. 3 weeks ago. Died before we could get him to town." "I'm sorry," Elena said, and meant it. Sort of. "We can't keep the farm." Her mother's hands shook around her cup. "Banks threatening foreclosure. We're 3 months behind on payments. Mariah's engagement fell through after you left. The family didn't want the association. Thomas is too young to manage things. I don't know what to do." Elena saw where this was going. "You want money," she said. Her mother's face flushed. "You married into the Hayes family. You have resources now. We're family. You should help." "Should I?" Elena set down her cup. "The same family that called me worthless? That treated me like hired help? That never once asked if I was okay?" "That was your father. It was all of you." Elena's voice was steady. "Every single one of you made me invisible. I wasn't worth your time unless you needed something." Mariah spoke up, voice sharp. "You think you're better than us now because you got lucky?" "I didn't get lucky. I took a chance. I worked. I proved myself. To strangers. While we needed you here. You never needed me. You needed someone to do the work you didn't want to do. There's a difference." Her mother started crying. Theatrical, manipulative crying that Elena had seen 100 times before. "Please, Elena. We'll lose everything." Colton had been quiet through all of this. Now he spoke. "How much do you owe?" Her mother named a figure. It was more than Elena expected, but not impossible. "We can help," Colton said, but there are conditions." Elena looked at him, surprised. "We'll pay off the debt," he continued. "Give you enough to get through the next year, but in exchange, you sell us the farm. We'll convert it to grazing land, integrate it with our operation. You can stay in the house, work the land if you want, but you'll work for us. Real work. Fair pay. No special treatment." Her mother's mouth fell open. "You want to take our farm? We want to save it. On our terms." Mariah stood. "This is ridiculous. We're not going to work for you." "Then you'll lose everything," Colton said simply. Your choice. Elena's mother looked at her. You do this to your own family? I'm giving you a chance, Elena said. The same chance I took. Work, honest work, no shortcuts, no handouts, just an opportunity to rebuild. That's cruel. That's fair. Her mother stood, outrage radiating from her. Get out. Both of you. If you won't help us properly, we don't want anything from you. Elena and Colton left. They rode away in silence. Elena felt lighter than she had in months, like she'd finally closed a door that should have been closed years ago. You okay? Colton asked. Yeah, I think I am. We can still help them if you want, different terms. No, you were right. They need to choose. Help themselves or lose everything. Either way, it's not my problem anymore. They rode back to the ranch. Winter finally broke in late March. The land transformed from brown to green almost overnight. New calves appeared in the pastures. The world felt full of possibility. Elena was in the stable when Jack found her. Boss wants you, he said. Main office. She found Colton and Gideon both there. Gideon looked better than he had in months, almost like himself again. Sit, Gideon said. Elena sat, wary. Gideon slid papers across the desk. These are the new ranch documents. Ownership transfers, operational agreements, everything legal. Elena scanned them. Her name was listed as co-owner. What is this? My son convinced me that you've earned a stake in this place, Gideon said. You've worked as hard as anyone, saved the ranch more than once, and you had the guts to do what was right even when it was expensive. He paused. I still think you're both fools, but you're honest fools. And apparently that counts for something. Elena looked at Colton. He was almost smiling. It's not charity, Colton said. It's recognition. You're a partner in this, officially. Elena stared at the papers. Her name. On legal documents. As an owner of something real. 6 months ago, she'd been invisible. Now she was a landowner. Thank you, she said quietly. Don't thank me yet, Gideon said. The new investors want to meet you. They're coming next month. You'll need to prove we know what we're doing. We do know what we're doing. Then prove it. The investors' visit went better than expected. They spent 3 days touring the ranch, reviewing operations, asking detailed questions. Elena walked them through the books, showed them the efficiency improvements, explained their plans for sustainable growth. Harrison pulled her aside on the last day. You've done impressive work here, he said. Turning around a failing operation while maintaining ethical standards. That's rare. Thank you. We'd like to invest more. Double our stake. But only if you're willing to expand. Maybe acquire neighboring land, build this into something bigger. Elena thought about that. Only if we can do it honestly. That's the only way we'd want it done. They shook hands. That evening, Elena stood on the porch watching the sunset. Colton joined her, 2 glasses of whiskey in hand. He gave her one. To surviving, he said. Elena clinked her glass against his. To rebuilding. They drank. The land stretched out before them, vast and difficult and beautiful. It wasn't the empire Gideon had envisioned. It was something better, something real, something built on truth instead of lies, on work instead of theft, on partnership instead of domination. It was theirs. And for the first time in her life, Elena wasn't invisible. She was seen. She was valued. She was home. The expansion happened faster than anyone expected. By late spring, the additional investment from Harrison's group allowed them to acquire 2 neighboring properties, not through force or fraud, but through legitimate purchase from families ready to retire from ranching. It added 4,000 acres to their operation, nearly replacing what they'd returned to the families Gideon had stolen from. But the work was different now. Every decision went through Elena and Colton together. Every purchase was documented. Every worker was paid fairly. They built slowly, carefully, making sure the foundation was solid before adding weight. Tucker noticed the change first. Ranch feels different, he said one morning while they were reviewing the week's schedule. Can't put my finger on it, but it's different. Better or worse? Elena asked. Tucker considered. Better. Maybe. People aren't scared anymore. Used to be everyone walked around waiting for Gideon to explode. Now, they just work. That's the goal. Yeah, well, it's working. The ranch hands had started bringing their families around. wives, children, people who'd been kept at a distance when Gideon ran everything through intimidation. There were more voices, more laughter, more life. It made the ranch feel less like a military operation and more like a community. Gideon watched it all with barely concealed disgust. "You're turning this place soft," he told Colton one evening. They were in the office going over quarterly numbers. The ranch was profitable again, but not at the levels Gideon remembered. "We're making it sustainable," Colton replied. "Sustainable means weak. You should be pushing harder, expanding faster, taking opportunities when they appear. We are expanding, just not at the cost of everything else." Gideon slammed his hand on the desk. "I didn't build this place by being careful. I built it by taking risks, by doing whatever was necessary. And you built it on fraud that nearly destroyed us." Colton's voice stayed level. "I'm not doing that again." "Then you'll never achieve what I achieved." "Good. I don't want to." Gideon stared at his son like he was looking at a stranger. Then he stood and walked out. Elena found Colton still sitting there an hour later, staring at the ledgers without seeing them. "He's never going to understand," she said quietly. "I know." "Does that bother you?" Colton was quiet for a moment. "It used to. Now I think I'm just tired of trying to make him see things differently. He is who he is. I can't change that." "So what do you do?" "I build something better, and I stop waiting for his approval." It sounded simple when he said it. Elena knew it wasn't. Summer brought unexpected news. Daniel Preston showed up at the ranch one afternoon with his lawyer and a proposal. The land they'd returned to him, the 1,200 acres, was more than his small operation could handle. He wanted to lease it back to the Hayes Ranch for grazing, with an agreement that gave him a percentage of the profits from any cattle raised on his land. "I get to keep ownership," Daniel explained. "You get to use the land. We both make money. Everybody wins." Colton and Elena exchanged looks. "That's fair," Elena said. "We can work with that." They drew up the agreement within a week. It became a model for the other families, too. The Kellermans wanted a similar arrangement for water rights. The Martinez family proposed a partnership on timber harvesting. What had started as restitution was transforming into something collaborative. The families Gideon had wronged weren't just getting their land back, they were becoming business partners. "This is strange," Catherine Wright said when she came to finalize the agreements. "I've never seen settlements turn into partnerships before." "We're making it up as we go," Elena admitted. "Well, it's working. Keep doing it." The success brought attention. Other ranches started asking how they'd managed to turn things around. A few newspapers ran stories about the Hayes Ranch's transformation from corruption to collaboration. It wasn't all positive. Some people saw confession as weakness, partnership as naive, but it was mostly good publicity. Too good, maybe. In August, a man named Richard Blackwell arrived at the ranch. He was wealthy, well-dressed, and according to his introduction, interested in investing in frontier operations. Gideon met with him first. Elena only learned about it when she saw them having drinks on the porch that evening. "Who's that?" she asked Martha. "Trouble," Martha said. "I can smell it from here." She was right. Richard Blackwell spent 3 days at the ranch, asking questions that seemed innocent but felt pointed. He wanted to know about their investor agreements, their land holdings, their profit margins. He was particularly interested in the partnerships with the Preston and Kellerman families. On the 4th day, he made his pitch. "I represent a consortium of investors looking to acquire ranching operations across the territory," Richard said. They were in the main office: Richard, Gideon, Colton, and Elena. "We've been watching your recovery. Impressive work. We'd like to make an offer." "We're not selling," Colton said immediately. "Hear me out. We're prepared to offer $2 million for the Hayes Ranch and all associated partnerships. You'd retain a management position, keep drawing salary, but ownership would transfer to the consortium." $2 million. Elena's brain couldn't even process a number that large. "That's generous," Gideon said slowly. "Too quickly." "It's designed to be. We recognize the value of what you've built." "We're not interested," Colton repeated. Richard smiled. "Don't answer now. Think about it. $2 million solves a lot of problems, pays off all debt, sets up your family for generations. And you still get to run the ranch you love." "Without owning it," Elena said. Ownership is just paper. Management is what matters. No, ownership is everything. It's the difference between building something that's yours and working for someone else's profit. Richard's smile didn't waver. Think it over. I'll be in town for another week. After he left, Gideon turned to Colton. You should consider it. Absolutely not. $2 million. I don't care if it's 10 million. We're not selling. You're being stubborn. I'm being smart. We just spent 9 months cleaning up your corruption and rebuilding on honest foundation. Now you want to sell to some faceless consortium that'll strip everything we've built? I want you to be practical. This ranch has nearly bankrupted us twice. Take the money. Secure your future. My future is here. Building this, not selling it off to the highest bidder. They argued for another 20 minutes before Gideon stormed out. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. She lay beside Colton, listening to him breathe, thinking about $2 million. Are we making a mistake? She whispered. What? Turning down that much money. Maybe we should consider it. Colton rolled over to face her. You don't mean that. I don't know what I mean. That money would solve everything. No more debt, no more struggling. We could live comfortably for the rest of our lives. Doing what? Working for someone else? Following orders from investors who don't care about anything except profit margins? Maybe that wouldn't be so bad. Yes, it would. Elena, look at what we've built. A ranch that's honest, that treats people fairly, that partners with the community instead of exploiting it. You think a consortium cares about any of that? No. Then we're not selling. He was right. She knew he was right. But the doubt lingered. Richard Blackwell didn't give up. Over the next week, his offer increased. 2.2 million, then 2.5. He started making arguments about security, stability, freedom from risk. He was good at his job, finding the pressure points, exploiting uncertainty. Gideon was weakening. Elena could see it in how he talked about the offers, how he framed them as opportunities instead of threats. We could take the money and start something new, he said one evening. Smaller operation, less stress. You don't believe that, Colton said. You'd be miserable working for someone else. I'm already miserable. At least I'd be rich and miserable. Then leave. Take whatever buyout they're offering you and go. But I'm keeping the ranch. It was the first time Elena had heard Colton threaten his father with complete separation. Gideon went pale. You'd force me out? If that's what it takes to keep this place from being sold off, yes. Father and son stared at each other across a divide that had been growing for 40 years. Finally, Gideon looked away. Do what you want. You will, anyway. He left the room. Elena waited until they were alone. You meant that, about forcing him out. Yeah, I did. That's harsh. Maybe. But I'm done letting him sabotage everything we've built. This ranch means something now. I'm not letting it become just another asset in someone's portfolio.